Hi, my name is Jamie Fernandez, and this is my presentation about my favorite part of the brain, which is the habenula. The habenula it receives information from the limbic system and the basal ganglia, and it gets that through like a fiber bundle, and that's called the medullaris. Long words. And it sends this information to different areas of the midbrain that are responsible for dopamine release. And those parts of the brain are called the substantia nigra and the ventral tegmental area. So this is a diagram kind of explaining so one interesting fact is that the actual habenula itself is not labeled on the diagram, but there are several labels that are like basically described right around it. And so if you're looking at a diagram, you're going to look at where it says habenula commissure or pineal body or posterior commissure. And when it comes to the anatomy, basically describing what the habenula consists of, there are many different types of species that have like a left and right asymmetrical difference, where one side of the brain looks a certain way and the other side of the brain looks another way. And like examples would be fish or amphibians. And in those examples, one side of the brain is significantly larger than the other. Now, when it comes to birds and mammals, though, it's not exactly symmetrical, but it's pretty close. It's a lot more symmetrical than it would be if it were a fish or an amphibian. The habenula is it's divided into two major parts. The lateral is known as like the limbic part, and the medial is known as the motor part. A really surprising fact that I had found when I was researching this part of the brain was that actually when they did a study on cats looking at the habenula of the cat's brain. And when they looked very closely and were kind of trying to understand what they were seeing, they realized that they could actually further divide it into 10 subnuclei of the lateral and then 5 subnuclei of the medial. So 15 parts altogether, which makes you think that it's very like I want to say it's very descriptive, and there's a lot of like things that make it up itself. And from what I was reading too, it's one of the parts of the brain that is like the least understood, and that it's still one of the parts of the brain that we do a lot of research on to help better understand things. And so when I found that out about it being able to be divided into 15 different parts, I thought that was pretty interesting. And further description of the lateral habenula, the primary input regions are going to be the lateral preoptic area, the ventral pallidum, the lateral hypothalamus, the media habenula, and the internal segment of globus pallidus. And the neurons are activated by stimuli that are associated with unpleasant events. So they are known as like reward negative stimuli. And the primary output regions are, like I mentioned before, dopaminergic, I can't say that word, dopaminergic regions and serotonergic regions of the brain. So the regions of the brain that deal with the dopamine and serotonin release. And the its basic function, this part of the habenula functions to the lateral dorsal tegmental nucleus, and it's in acquisition of the avoidance responses. And recent research that they have done actually shows that it might play one of the most important roles in making decisions for humans. And to describe the medial habenula, the primary input is from the septal nuclei, the dopaminergic inputs, noradrenergic inputs, and GABAergic inputs. And this sends outputs of glutamate, substance P, and acetylcholine. And these go to the periductal gray and pineal gland. And another really interesting fact that I wanted to share, well, not a fact, but a couple of facts that I wanted to share about the habenula in people with depression is that when doctors were studying their patients and looking at their habenula, like in a brain scan, a lot of scientists found that both the medial and lateral habenula show reduced volume, so they're smaller. And also neuron cell numbers were reduced on just the right side in addition to that. So some of the treatments that they came up with for people with depression that are severely affected are that they could do deep brain stimulation on the right side, or I'm sorry, they could do deep brain stimulation on the lateral habenula that could possibly help to reduce their symptoms. And they use this on patients where either they've been very treatment resistant or they have been very severely affected by the depression, and they are trying to find a different way to treat themselves. So, and yeah, that is it. Thank you so much for listening to my presentation. All right.